Bunn is an award-winning Chief Information Officer, serial entrepreneur, and board director recognized for her transformational leadership in technology and business strategy. As CIO of the National Association of Corporate Directors, she leads enterprise-wide digital transformation initiatives that modernize infrastructure, elevate customer experience, and unlock new revenue opportunities. A founder at heart, Rona has launched and led multiple ventures. She founded SkyTech Solutions, a business and IT consulting firm specializing in aligning technology with strategic growth goals, and Blue Jewels, a wearable technology company that introduced a stylish connected device years before the Apple Watch. These ventures, along with her record of building innovative programs inside a large organization, reflect her ability to drive entrepreneurial success in both startup and enterprise environments. With more than 25 years of experience spanning Fortune 500 companies, government, and startups, Rona has a proven track record of building high-performing organizations, driving innovation, and delivering measurable results. She also serves on the board of IT Senior Management Forum, that's ITSMF, as audit chair and on the advisory board of Herman Science, a technology company specializing in generative AI and security awareness training with embedded neuroscience. Rona is passionate about mentoring emerging leaders, advancing diversity in technology, and equipping professionals with the tools to succeed in AI-driven future. She has been recognized with the 2025 Capital CIO Orby Award for transformational leadership and is frequently sought after for her expertise in digital transformation, AI integration, and change management. A CPA by training, Rona blends strategic vision with operational excellence to create lasting business impact. Whether in the boardroom, the C-suite, or the startup arena, she is known for turning bold ideas into transformative outcomes. That's it for me for now as your host.
Good morning, everyone. I am so excited to be here with you all, talking about a topic that has been so critical to the success throughout my career. And I believe that these traits that we're going to talk about today are necessary for all leaders in technology. The topic is fearless innovation, bringing your entrepreneurial mindset to the tech table. Well, let me start with a question. What does it mean to be fearless in technology today? Every one of us has been asked to make decisions in the dark, without all the information, without a safety net, and sometimes without permission. That's leadership. But it's not just leadership. It entails having an entrepreneurial mindset. And here's the truth. You don't need to be a startup founder to think like an entrepreneur. You can be fearless right where you are, inside an enterprise, inside government, inside nonprofits, and inside your own community. Today, I'm going to share stories of technology leaders, including my own, who acted fearlessly when the stakes were high. But before we dive into their journeys, let me give you a simple framework that ties it all together. The framework is called, guess what? Fearless. It highlights 6 traits that entrepreneurial leaders tend to embody. They focus on the future, spotting opportunities before others do, and they act on them. They experiment boldly. They test fast, they fail small, and they learn big. They activate with what they have. They move forward with the resources they have to prove out their concept before they ask for more. They rise stronger, turning setbacks into springboards. They lead in 2 worlds, balancing delivering what's expected today with building for tomorrow. And they sell the story. They inspire belief and mobilize action. As I tell each story today, I'll connect it back to these 6 traits. Let's begin with my own story. which is one of the defining moments in my career, which made me lean into bringing my entrepreneurial mindset to the tech table. I remember exactly where I was when the idea for Blue Jewels came to me. I was in my executive MBA program at NYU, sitting through an 8-hour Saturday class. It was 2 full days every other weekend, and during those long stretches, I wasn't allowed to look at my phone. As a mother, daughter, leader, and caregiver, I knew that this disconnection was not just inconvenient, it was absolutely unacceptable. Women, more than anyone else, are expected to be available for our families, for our children, for our parents, for work. And yet, so many environments like church, school, the boardroom, dinner events, it simply wasn't acceptable to pull out your phone. And that was a problem. I saw an opportunity. What if technology could come to us women? What if connection could be discreet, beautiful, and wearable? That was about 15 years ago before the Apple Watch even existed. And most people told me that women will not wear tech on their bodies every day. But I decided to be fearless, to walk into the unknown and to figure it out, to see if what I thought was really true. I didn't know exactly how, but I knew that I would assemble a team, that I would validate the idea, and I would create a solution. And I did just that. My first prototype, whoa, it was ugly. It was a little circuit board with a few chips and some flashing lights. It barely worked. It drained the battery in minutes, and it was way too big to fit on the wrist or a neck. Matter of fact, it was about the size of Flavor Flav's clock, not discreet at all. But when I held that little baby board in my hand, I felt so proud because it proved that I could actually create the technology. And I learned quickly, instead of boiling the ocean, I focused on the battery life and the size, and I partnered with global jewelry designers and suppliers to make it beautiful. So, step by step, iteration by iteration, Blue Jewels came alive. Now, fast forward several months. Time to show it off at CES in Las Vegas, which is the world's largest stage for consumer electronics. Of course, the road to building the product was far from smooth, but I'll never forget the one almost disastrous moment that tested my resilience. My team made a big mistake. We shipped our materials through the USPS, and CES did not accept USPS packages. They got returned. We were still on the East Coast when this happened, and no one at the post office would answer the phone. It was chaos. I literally broke down in tears because I knew that we only had 1 hour to make it to the post office when we arrived in Vegas to get those packages. That pressure was immense, and I almost gave up. I traveled to Vegas hopeless, but my team did recover the packages and we got them to the booth and we got the show started. I had to reset my mind to make sure that we could have success. Now, I never exhibited before, never launched a hardware product before, and to be honest, at the show, I was extremely intimidated. But then something happened. Crowds started stopping by. At first, I thought we got a few viewers. The big wave was just a fluke. But then it kept happening every hour. Finally, I asked the tour guide, "What's going on?" And she told me that Blue Jewels had been chosen as one of the most interesting new products of the year. We were on a stop in the CES New Products Tour. People had paid to see Blue Jewels, and at that moment, I went from intimidated to exhilarated. That imposter syndrome went out the door because I realized that I hit on something real. The show was so successful that I had both major shopping networks contacting me every month for months following the event, ready to get the product into women's jewelry collections. Now, unfortunately, after I developed the prototype, I had to make a hard choice not to mass produce Blue Jewels because of a major family life event. But here's the thing: a year later, Apple released the Apple Watch. And what happened? Women wore it. Jewelry designers started making beautiful jewelry to encase the Apple Watch, just as I envisioned. That's when I knew and I felt vindicated. My fearless opportunity spotting had been right. The world just needed time to catch up. And that journey taught me what every entrepreneurial leader must know: setbacks are inevitable. What matters most is how quickly you bounce back, how fast you learn, how fast you pivot, and how fast you get back on track. Blue Jewels wasn't just about creating wearable technology, it was about living the very principles of fearless, spotting opportunities that others dismiss, and pivoting fast when the road turns rough. This journey led me to document and talk about what this framework is all about. That fearless, resilient leaders don't just chase ideas, they validate them, they adapt, and they leave a path for others to follow. Now, let's move to another leader, one of my good friends who faced one of the toughest transformations imaginable, where failure wasn't the end, but it was the beginning of resilience in action. Fern Johnson, a global technology executive, once led one of the toughest technology and business transformation programs inside a Fortune 50 company. It was a global procurement system rollout. Imagine being given the responsibility of redesigning how a company spends billions across 40 markets, with every region, every vendor, and every category manager doing things in their own way. Fern was responsible for both the technology and the business results. And early on, the initiative failed. Not a small miss, but a massive public failure in the company's most critical business line. And she was taken to the woodshed. But here's the truth: the technology wasn't the problem. That part actually worked. What failed was the business side of the transformation. Processes hadn't been optimized. Local teams resisted standardization. People clung on to the long standing vendor relationships they had depended on for years. So, garbage in, garbage out. The system she and her team built reflected just that. The project was never going to succeed until the business owned the change. As stubborn as they were, Fern didn't run from it. She had paused. She gathered the right people and reframed the entire project. She replaced underperformers. She demanded re-engineering of process, deeper testing, and sat in the war rooms until the details were right. She brought in the champions, people who could sell the process change to their peers in their own language, literally. And she went to Latin America month after month, not sending emails, but showing up in person, rounding up the troops, and had everyone joining in and saying, "This cannot fail." And she didn't try to sell the technology. She sold the value. She showed that if teams streamlined, collaborated, and followed the new process, they would unlock enormous savings. And once the business leaders saw the return, adoption became easier and easier. And that program went from a failure to saving more than $60 million, spanning every global market, and becoming award winning. What did she learn? That failure will make you better. And failure is never the final stop. That resilience is your superpower. And that sometimes leaders don't need to be the loudest voice, but they simply need to be the one who shows up consistently, visibly, and fearlessly. Fern's journey showed us what it looks like to live fearless. Focusing on the future, she envisioned an efficient global system where few others did. She experimented boldly. She paused, reset, and tried again until it worked. She rose stronger, embracing resilience, turning public failure into global success. And she sold the story, not the tech, but the value, inspiring buy in across the globe. Fern showed us that courage isn't chaos, it's choreography. But even the best choreography stalls without belief. Fern also leaned into selling the story, but to further see the power of this trait, we turn to a story which is all about inspiring belief and mobilizing action. You know what separates good leaders from transformational ones? It's not how well they manage the technology, it's how boldly they inspire belief and mobilize people to take action on something bigger than themselves. Let me share with you the story of my good friend Gary Flowers, who's the Chief Information Officer at Europe. When Gary arrived, he discovered something critical. Europe's secret sauce, their workplace readiness curriculum, the very thing that made them different from coding boot camps and community colleges, was fragmented. They had 25 locations, 6 different learning management systems, 15 different versions of the curriculum. Imagine being a corporate partner like a leading US bank, you're hiring Europe graduates from across the country. In New York, the students are excellent, but in Atlanta, they're struggling. Why? Because they were taught completely differently. And that's not a technology problem, it's an organizational credibility problem. Now, here's where Gary made the fearless choice. He refused to treat this as an IT project. He reframed it as a mission critical organizational initiative. And then he painted the vision. He said, what if every Year Up student in New York, in Seattle, in Atlanta was taught the exact same skills in the exact same way? What if we had one platform with one voice and one curriculum that represented who we are? That vision inspired belief. But belief without action is just a dream. So Gary acted. He sat down, he wrote the funding proposal himself, and he didn't just push it as Gary's plan. Every time he presented it, he said, MJ and I worked on this together. MJ was his chief program officer, and she had the instructors, the directors, the people who would live this change. Here's the genius, though. Whether or not she wrote a single word, it didn't matter. By giving her the credit, he made it our plan, not his plan. And that's how you mobilize people. Now, here's the context. This wasn't a small request. Europe is a $200 million organization. To walk in and ask for $5 million for one initiative was bold. It was a big swing. And yet, because the vision was so compelling, funders didn't just say yes, they doubled down. He raised $11 million from foundation funding partners because they believed in the vision of the hybrid learning and the future it could unlock. Now, the easy part was the technology, the hard part was the change management. When he launched their MVP, it stumbled. Faculty weren't fully on board. Change wasn't landing the way they thought it should. And here's why. The team was trying to move too fast, taking on too much all at once, without pausing to absorb the lessons learned from their smaller rollouts. Gary knew if they kept pushing at this pace, the initiative could collapse under its own weight. So, instead of pressing ahead, he paused. He told his team, we need to learn more before we scale. If we don't take this time to reflect, we'll repeat mistakes at a bigger scale, and that could derail this entire transformation. So, they adjusted. They moved to a phased rollout. They learned, and within 2 years, on time and on budget, Year Up had one unified learning management system, one curriculum, and one voice. What was the impact? It was huge. Faculty saved 25% of their time. Students everywhere received the same high quality career readiness skills. Europe gained capacity to scale, not just from 800 to 1,000 students, but to scale to thousands if they so chose. And because the data was now consistent, it laid the foundation for a predictive and prescriptive AI, the kind that can tell you in advance which students need coaching and how to keep them on track. And here's the lesson for all of us. When you try to do something transformational, people won't always see the vision as clearly as you do. It's okay, but your job is to carry it until they can, to give them a reason to believe and to make it our plan instead of your plan. So Gary didn't sell a piece of technology. He sold belief, belief in one platform, one voice, and one curriculum. He reinforced that step by step, funding secured, check, lessons learned, check, phase by phase until the transformation became reality. And so that's how you don't just solve a problem, you inspire belief, and that's how you mobilize action. Now, once belief and activation create lift, the environment sometimes still pushes back. And that's when focusing on the future, experimenting boldly, and the ability to lead in two worlds matter. Sometimes the bravest thing that we can do as leaders is to walk into a room where no one has invited us and ask, tell me more. Some of the greatest missed opportunities in technology don't come from lack of funding. They come from a lack of imagination. And that's exactly what happened with Chief Information Officer Lisa Roger. Her colleagues were frustrated. Systems were crawling. People were waiting. The request seemed simple. We just need a faster server. Lisa paused. She knew that only solving what was in front of her would cause her to miss the bigger picture. So the real issue wasn't hardware, it was time. Time for people waiting on answers. Time for people waiting on help. So instead of approving the quick fix, Lisa reframed the problem. She pulled in engineers, vendors, and business leaders together and asked, what if we could solve this problem not just for today, but for tomorrow as well? So the team together began mapping the workflows end to end, and the breakthrough came. They realized that thousands of images didn't need to be reviewed manually at all, which is what they had been doing for many years. What if they used geospatial data from flyovers and combined it with LiDAR scans and high resolution imagery and trained the machine learning models to do all the work? What if AI could recognize patterns, debris piles versus clear streets, water damage versus wind damage, and highlight it all in real time? That experiment changed everything. What used to take weeks or months of analysis could now be done in days. And here's the part that just gives me chills. Because of that leap, the whole communities received aid faster. Relief reached the right neighborhoods sooner. Families weren't left waiting. Technology didn't just process data, it accelerated recovery, restored hope, and quite literally helped people rebuild their lives. What makes Lisa's transformation journey so special is that she had to lead in two worlds. In one world, she had to keep operations running and business leaders calm, giving them stability, reliability, and speed now. But on the other hand, she had to hold on to a bigger vision, challenging old assumptions and uniting people across IT, the business, and partners to build something new. True entrepreneurial leadership means carrying both, protecting the present and creating the future. Lisa showed us what looked like a request for a server upgrade became a chance to transform lives. And because she chose to focus on the future and experiment boldly and lead in two worlds, what once took months now is done in days. Families get help faster and communities recover sooner. Technology became more than just infrastructure, it became impact. And that's the challenge for all of us technology leaders. If we only fix what's in front of us, we miss that future. So the next time someone says to you something like, we just need a faster server, I hope you'll remember Lisa's example and ask yourself, which fearless trait do I need to lean on right now? Because the truth is, the future is waiting on us. The only question is, will we be fearless enough to push the envelope and imagine more? Now let's bring this fearless thing full circle and put it in your hands. Let's make this real today. You've just heard the 6 traits of the fearless framework applied in several everyday stories. You have to focus on the future. You have to experiment boldly. You have to activate with what you have. You have to rise stronger. You have to lead in two worlds, and you have to sell the story. Well, I've done a lot of talking today. Now it's your turn to engage. Right now, I want you to put your thinking caps on. I want you to pick one trait that you are going to embrace today, not someday, not when the symposium ends, but today. Now, I want you to say it out loud. Or you can type that letter of the trait, the F, the E, the A, the R, the L, or the S into the chat. Or write it down. Let's see that fearless energy light up. The very act of you adopting this trait is fearless in action. And here's the one thing, once you type it, you've claimed it. And this is your fearless commitment. I want to thank our host today for giving me the honor to open up this symposium and having the opportunity to inspire you. I also want to thank each and every one of you for showing up fully ready to learn and to lead with your entrepreneurial mindset. I can't wait to hear those fearless stories that come out of this community. So please feel free to message me on LinkedIn and to share them. And you all have an amazing and fearless day.